We're in a moment of technological acceleration unlike anything the world has seen before. 5 years from now, life will look radically different, and the shift is already underway. I'm Rachel Wilkins, and this is The Good News Is, a show about what's next and how to meet it with curiosity. Each week, I'll talk with the thinkers and builders that are shaping the future, from the evolution of money to digital land, on-chain fashion, and even space travel. Let's get into it. My guest today is somebody who has been at the forefront of many major media and tech evolutions over the past 2 decades, from revitalizing legacy brands like Time to now shaping the on-ramp of the future of finance at MoonPay. Keith has never shied away from change. He's embraced it, redefined it, and invited others along for the ride. So Keith, what a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining the Good News Is podcast. We appreciate you.
Listen, I love you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I was thinking about as I was prepping was I find myself quoting something that you said at a Christie's Art and Tech conference back in probably 2021 or 22. And it's a moment that stuck with me that I use when I'm trying to explain and grasp kind of the magnitude of where we're at right now in terms of tech acceleration. And it's this story that you shared where you drew a line from kind of the invention of some things that we take for granted right now and made a compelling case for kind of where we're at right now and how it's a very similar transformative era. Would you mind just sharing that story?
So which one? I will tell you, I have
many stories.
I can think of 20 that do that. So tell me which one stuck with you specifically, and I will gladly jump into exactly why that stuck with me.
Light bulbs, airplanes, the 30-year period of time.
Okay. So I was really fortunate that my high school asked me to do the commencement speech, right? So you could find this speech that I'm about to say on my LinkedIn, right? And it's how to embrace innovation and change. And what I said at Christie's in 2022, I think it was, right? Or whenever it was that I had said it was, everyone thinks this time is different. And things are going to be changed. Things are going to be very different. But like we always go through these moments where things become different, right? And the example that I gave was between 1879 and 1904, the light bulb, the airplane, the automobile, and the telephone were all invented. Okay, so a 25-year period, the light bulb, the automobile, the airplane, and the telephone, all invented, right? So imagine this. If you passed away in 1878, you don't know a world that has any of those 4 inventions. And if you were born in 1905, like, the inventions haven't really had the impact that they're going to have. And so like where we are right now with blockchain technologies and AI is like, we're kind of like 1910, right? Where there's still some people on the side of the road being like, I don't want an automobile. I'll stick with my horse. Thank you so much. I don't need this telephone. Like I speak to people enough already. I don't need to fly anywhere, right? Like people have not yet seen the first layer or first order of magnitude impact that these technologies and innovations are going to have, let alone the second, third, fourth layer of impacts and orders of impacts that these will have. And so like, I always use this as an example because everyone's like, oh my God, the world is changing so drastically. The world is always changing so drastically. And every once in a while you have these unbelievable major shifts, which is what we're about to see with blockchain technologies and AI technologies and machine learning technologies and even metaversal technologies, which, by the way, they're all the same side of the same coin, right?
Which period of time do you think impacts us more fundamentally as a human race, that 25-year period, or where we are right now?
I don't know. We'll see. Talk to me in 100 years.
Keith, I know you're famously a Churchillian. That's a term for somebody who is passionate about Churchill's wonderful quotes. I want to hit you with one of his most resonant quotes, and that is the pessimist always sees difficulty in every opportunity, and the optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. See, I totally butchered it.
Yep.
So your career has been anything but conventional, from Condé Nast to Wired to Time, now to MoonPay. Is there anything that really stands out, kind of where you've seen perhaps possibility where others might have seen risk? Like, what was kind of the inflection points that drew you to these kind of moments in time, both in media and in technology?
So when I was coming up here, you put out on X, what questions do you want to ask Keith? I think I was the only one who responded, right?
Somebody said, when is MoonPay going to be my sugar daddy? So how about that?
I want, when is MoonPay going to be my sugar daddy? I'm not answering that question. Okay. So I sent it to Maya Drazen, who, chief brand officer over at Time, was my partner for many years and almost everything great I ever worked on as a team. And Maya said to me, well, what question would you ask? And I think the question I would ask is the answer to the question you're asking, which is why? Like, all I keep doing is asking why. And, I try to push everyone to ask why all the time. Why does it have to be this way? Why can't digital revenue exceed print revenue? That was just a question I asked in like 2009, right? People are like, it can't, but it can, right? Why can't a tablet edition operate completely different than a magazine, right? Why don't people want social mobile video for their news? Why wouldn't somebody want this? Most people operate and they just do, right? And they don't think about what they're doing. And it's not about being contrarian or pushing back or challenging the status quo. It's actually, Mark Benioff actually says it beautifully. It's just approaching everything with a beginner's mind, right? And I think that for me, right, a lot of my career hasn't been like inventing something. It's just been observing trends and then saying, why couldn't this trend be applied to Wired or Ars Technica or Bloomberg or Wired or Time? MoonPay is different for me because it's the first time that I've moved from observing a technological trend and applying it to the industry I'm in to participating in the technological trend and building it towards the outcome that I'm hoping we achieve, right? And so in that regard, it's really exciting for me because I get to ask why every day, and I watch what everyone's building, and then like we're evolving against the backdrop of a really evolving ecosystem and thriving sort of space. But that's really all it's been asking these why questions. Why? And that's what I would ask everyone to do. And, a lot of times people get so caught up in just doing the work that they don't actually step back to think, why does it have to be done this way? Why can't it be done this way?
So why do you believe that blockchain technology is kind of the future of finance, the future of so many different industries? I've heard you talk about media not being a vertical or being a horizontal. Now that we have kind of these technological rails, like, talk to us about what the why is for you.
Okay, so I mean, how much time do we have? Because I love this topic more than anything else, Rachel, right? So do you remember like when I grew up in New York, right? There used to be these ads, and the ads on TV were for AT&T, and the ads used to say, call Japan for $2.19 a minute, or call France for $1.49 from America, right? Do you remember like that moment in time where like AT&T would advertise long distance calls? Notice you haven't seen an ad like that in forever, right? I bring this up because the reason those ads went away was telephony, or like voice over IP, was absorbed by the internet, right? And like when something's absorbed by the internet, the price tends to drop to zero, right? So think about today, right? Like think about this past week. I mean, you've probably held up your phone and FaceTimed somebody in another country, and you haven't thought twice about the cost of that, right? Essentially because it's free, right? It's so nominal. And that's the transformation that takes place when you have a technology that's absorbed by the internet, okay? Up until this point, the internet's never had an embedded finance layer, right? And so what blockchain technologies is actually doing, what stablecoins are actually doing, is it's applying an embedded finance layer to the internet, right? So you could now move value for the first time sort of seamlessly without unnecessary intermediaries over the internet. And so what we're about to see is the price of moving money globally is going to change drastically. At the same time, what we're seeing is a technological and a generational shift in consumer behavior, right? So when I grew up, I had a Nintendo, right? Or I had a Sega at one point. I didn't have Sega. I just had Nintendos, right? Like I was a Nintendo household. Like my really wealthy friends had Neo Geos, right? If you remember what Neo Geo was, which was 64-bit, which was unbelievable at the time.
I had a Commodore 64, so
okay, but hold on, like the Commodore 64 is a great example too, because everything in your life today is gamified, right? But everything in your life is gamified because when you were a child, you grew up playing games, and then slowly that behavior was absorbed into everything because decision makers who grew up like that shifted the way in which things were built to accommodate what they know. And people who were resisting that either retired or died. Like, I hate to use it that way, right? Yeah. But they moved out of power, right? And so what we're about to see is we're seeing a generational and a technological shift take place where a lot of functions are being replaced and a lot of experiences are being replaced by people who are 100% digitally native and understand and value the idea of digital ownership being the same as physical ownership, right? And by the way, if you don't believe me, look at any child today that asks for Robux, right? Like in our adult mind, we say a digital currency to be used for a dimensionalized social media asset to buy a digital asset to be able to show off to your friends. To any child's mind, they say, I want this because this gives me that, and that's where my friends are at, right?
I mean, you only have to look at the high street and see that, you know, the Toys R Us are gone. Generational kind of spending for Gen Z is digital assets. That's where they're spending their quote unquote pocket money.
Now here's what's interesting, right? Like I do want to caution for 1 second that I don't believe I'm not a purist, okay? And like, there's a huge difference between purists and I would say conventionalists. I'm a conventionalist, okay? My goal is to apply the technology for the largest scalable mass adoption, right? So that at times comes in contrast with the ideological purity of any evolution. And what I mean by that is like, if you go back to Wired, like the opening manifesto of Wired in 1993 was technology is whipping through society like a Bengali typhoon while mainstream media is asleep at the wheel, right? If you think about it today, that's just as applicable in 1993 as it is in 2025, right? The reason is when people don't understand something, they value it at zero, right? That's a really weird thought. If you don't understand something, you value it at zero. If you do understand something, you'll justify the value to any infinite sort of cause or means whatsoever. Okay, so I step back and I look at this and I think to myself, decentralization is not going to replace centralization, okay? Cryptocurrency is not going to replace the US dollar. What these situations are going to do is they're going to provide more choice to mass consumers, right? So if you only had one way to move money, you now are going to have multiple ways to move money, and they're going to actually work in conjunction with each other, right? So like, I hate to break it to anyone who thinks that, you know, the biggest banks of the world are disappearing tomorrow. Like, they're not, right? But like, what this technology is going to do is it's plumbing that's going to make them more efficient and effective. And inefficiencies are going to move out of the way. The banks are going to be disrupted because they're going to have to make money different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
But consumers are going to have a faster, better experience to be able to move money. Like, and that's just simply how it's going to sort of evolve. Stable coins are an incredible basket for US Treasury bonds for the US dollar dominance, right? If you take Tether, USDT, Tether's the 19th largest holder of Treasury bonds on the planet, of US Treasury bonds. I mean, think about that. Tether owns more US Treasury bonds than Germany.
Wow.
Okay. So like when you start to think about the space like that, and you start to realize like money movement's one thing, stable coins is another thing, Bitcoin's one thing, meme coins are another thing, you start to realize the space is not a vertical, it's a horizontal with a lot of verticals within it. And so like where I'm really excited is all of these verticals are starting to set sort of in their own sort of unique ways. Bitcoin is being seen as an asset class. The ETFs are being absorbed by some of the largest financial institutions on the planet. DeFi protocols are moving money faster than ever before. Meme coins are essentially the same equivalent of gaming. It's essentially gambling on the web, but it's getting people comfortable with the idea that they could buy and sell tokenized anything, right? Mm-hmm. Today we have XAUT, which is Tether's commoditized gold, right, token on MoonPay. If you go on to MoonPay's X account today, that's what's pinned at the top, is you could buy tokenized gold through MoonPay. So today, MoonPay is about fiat to crypto. It's really evolving to fiat to anything tokenized, right? And the world that we know in digital is, in media, we saw this, right? Anything that could be digitized will be, right? You'll have digital text, audio, video, social, and then different technologies that will be implementations. In the second order magnitude of that is anything that's digitized has the potential to be tokenized. And if it can be tokenized, it can be bought and sold online.
Everything will be digitalized. Everything will ultimately be tokenized, but should it be?
Who am I to decide?
Right.
Like here's the thing, right? Like everyone says they want free markets, right? Let the markets decide, right? And that's I'm pro competition. Like, so if it can be tokenized, right? Like, okay, right? And if people want to ultimately buy and sell it, okay, right? But it's not my job to decide or curate this space. My job is to work within the regulations of the space to provide the best, most compliant experience to access the space. And then whatever you want to do ultimately is your decision, right? And I think that that's a really important question that people have to ask, which is, people look at X and they say, it's terrible since Elon Musk's acquisition. I would look at X and I would say, I actually like it more post Elon Musk's acquisition because I didn't realize how much was actually being suppressed. And it's my responsibility as an individual to be able to wade through what's true and what's not true, right? It's my responsibility as an individual to decide what I want to read. It's my responsibility as an individual to decide how I want to consume content. It's not some other platform's responsibility to say yes or no. And ultimately, not a Winston Churchill quote, but a Martin Luther King quote, sunshine is the best disinfectant, right? So like, I'd rather let the public transparently disinfect anything rather than me make the decision if it's, an arbitrary decision based on individual belief systems.
How do you feel about decentralized social? Do you think we'll get there?
I don't know. It's a very interesting question. The technology's there, right, to be able to do it. You could see that there's companies out there like Farcaster that are doing it, Blue Sky doing it. The question is not, is the technology there? The question is does the consumer want it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a really interesting question. And here's a bigger question, which is, does the consumer, the average consumer, your mom, who I met in Liverpool, right? Does she understand the concept and the differentiation of centralization versus decentralization? Most people don't, right? It's very clear. However, here's a real world way in which people can start to understand it. let's say the US actually banned TikTok.
Mm.
Okay. If the US actually banned TikTok, which in full disclosure, I'm 100% in favor of, and I would gladly endorse it. And I did write a letter saying that I want TikTok banned and Section 230 of the FCC repealed. Two of the worst things, in my opinion, out there that undermine American democracy. But if the government banned TikTok, you would have a group of people between the ages of, let's say, 14 and 40 who would freak out, right? 140 million Americans are on TikTok, I believe was the last stat I saw, and they would freak out. And you know why they'd freak out? They'd freak out because their friend circle was taken away from them. Their businesses were taken away from them. Their platform of distribution was taken away from them, all without their choice, okay? And for the first time ever, I think people would have this realization of, whoa, that could just happen. Nobody on the planet that's an average person, anywhere is looking at TikTok saying, this is Chinese spyware, right? They're just saying, like, this is a platform where I could do distribution. Washington can say this is Chinese spyware. If you're a technologist, you could know it is, right? But if you're just the average Joe of the 140 million, I would argue that a large majority doesn't think like that. They just think easy, convenient access, the same way that people don't think about data privacy in Facebook platforms, right? They just say it's convenient. So I think that if TikTok was banned, people would understand the idea of centralization versus decentralization, because if TikTok was banned, then all of a sudden it's very easy for me to give you the mental model of what if Apple one day decided to go into your phone and erase your photographs and your memories? What if Google decided to erase your exchanges and contacts, right? I mean, I'm not presenting that they would, right? As a matter of fact, like Apple's actually proven the exact opposite, right? When presented on privacy. However, like now all of a sudden that leap is not so far-fetched, right? And so when you start to get to that sort of level, then all of a sudden I think people can start to understand the idea of centralization versus decentralization, and then people can grasp decentralized social media. But like right now, just because you could decentralize it doesn't mean anything. Look at like the great line from Meet the Parents, right? Like, I have nipples, Fokker, can you milk me? Right? That's what decentralized social media is.
Oh my goodness. You're absolutely right, but I did not see that line coming. Keith, if
I
you
have to make it entertaining for you, right? It was
Talene,
I hope Talene is okay with that one, but I stand by that statement.
So one of the things that I have added into this show recently was this idea that there's a lot of questions that the average person is too afraid to ask because they're afraid that it's a stupid question. So I want to make sure that people are comfortable asking what could be perceived as a stupid question, because let's be honest, if one person is wondering it, there's likely 1,000 other people that are wondering and having the same question too. So if you'll just come with me on this journey, Keith, I got 5 quick fire questions for you.
Sure, but Rachel, I just want you to know, like, since we're going down a deep philosophical belief, I agree with this theoretically, but there are stupid questions. Okay, like let's not get ourselves. So, like, if you ask a question that's genuinely stupid, I'm sorry, we are going to have to call this one out. Okay,
that's fair. That is fair.
But
as
long as we know that these are the rules, let's see the questions. Okay.
So these are the questions that I have kind of surfaced as related to crypto that are kind of coming from the average folks. So the first one isn't crypto bad for the environment?
Okay, so, well,
I'm going to ask you to try and keep it in a minute. Let's see if we can do it.
I can. Like I said this earlier, that when somebody doesn't understand something, they value it at zero, right? And so, like, a lot of people's arguments are that it's bad for the environment, say it consumes a lot of energy unnecessarily. And unnecessarily would be the question I would present is, like, is it really unnecessarily, right? Like, it's unnecessarily to you, but maybe not to someone else. Conversely, like YouTube, right, like, consumes an insane amount of energy. I think before Ethereum ported over to proof of stake, YouTube was 220 times more energy consumptive than the Ethereum network when it was on proof of work, right? But nobody questions whether or not YouTube is bad for the environment, but people use YouTube all the time. And to what extent? To watch cat videos? Like, how good is that sort of return? But like, who am I again to judge what one person values or another? And so I think that it's very subjective in that regard.
Great answer. The next one would be, isn't most of the crypto world just scams and speculation?
Okay, so that once again, it's a great example of the media misunderstanding crypto holistically. It treats crypto as a vertical when crypto is very much a horizontal, right? And in the instances of the horizontal, there's a lot of verticals within it, right? And within each vertical, you're going to have different actors, right? Now, because cryptocurrency touches money, I think you're going to have a more profound number of bad actors in the earliest stages as it's maturing. You have to remember that the industry is 15 years old, right? The first time ever the industry is seeing clarity from a regulatory perspective in the United States and in Europe. It's seeing legislative clarity for the first time ever. Like 2 weeks ago, the DeFi broker rule was passed. It's seeing banking clarity for the first time ever, right? Like you can all of a sudden have, OCC rules on Operation Choke Point 2.0 revoked. And it's seeing banking clarity, accounting clarity as it relates to the FASB rules, like how people account for, how businesses account for holding crypto assets. Those clarities are important because with those clarities, you have foundational moments for the industry to move into the larger sort of financial ecosystem, right? As it matures against the backdrop of these clarities, the bad actors move out of the way. However, if you show me any industry where money can be made, I could show you a bad actor, right? Like, are you going to say that the health industry is bad because it had Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes? Are you going to say telecom is bad because it had MCI? Are you going to say that like TradFi is bad because it had Lehman Brothers or Bernie Madoff? Like, so it's like we could go through every industry and I could show you bad actors. But I think what you're seeing with the crypto industry is with the regulatory clarity, legislative clarity, banking clarity, and accounting clarity, you're going to see sort of the maturation over the coming years in a very rapid manner.
Great examples. One that relates to security and kind of self-sovereignty. If I lose my password or private key, do I really lose everything?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Offer any insight into maybe how people could protect themselves with that? Biometric, third parties, anything? No.
Well, Ledger rolled out Ledger Recover, right? I do think that the space will mature in that in some capacity, but like one of the benefits of the space is you own the right to custody your money, right? And so like if you look at MoonPay, we do not custody anyone's crypto, right? And why is that great? And someone asked me this question earlier today. It's great because if MoonPay went out of business tomorrow, knock on wood, I hope it never does, nor do I think it will. But if it went out of business tomorrow, you own your crypto.
Yeah.
Right. But if an FTX happens, right, and it's a centralized player that gives you all of that assurance, you lose your crypto. Right. So, like I like the idea of empowering the individual to be responsible for their own sort of custody. And hopefully that's been the theme of this conversation so far, right? Like, I do not want to make your decisions for you. I just want to make sure that you are having access to this incredible decentralized world in a regulated, compliant manner.
Yeah. And one other question, this might, again, cue you up for a philosophical answer, Keith.
No, by the way, these are not dumb questions. None of these were dumb questions so far. Like, I was expecting really bad. But these were really good questions.
So this one might be, if I can't touch it, how is it real money? It's a genuine question in the Google search.
I don't honestly. Okay, so well, the historical sort of economic answer to value is that it needs to have some sort of real tangible asset. Like, I would argue that value is attributed to when enough people believe that value exists in something, right? Mm-hmm. I think that that's a very modernized sort of view of value attribution, right? But like, you could touch the US dollar, right? But the US dollar has no value to it other than the fact that the US dollar is backed by the government of the US. But like in 1972, it was backed by gold, right? And then it moved off the gold standard. And so it's not like you could trace the US dollar back to gold, or that you could turn it in for something physical, right? You just could touch it. Like, so I would say value is when enough people believe value exists.
So that is a wrap on our 4 very important questions here. I don't know how much time you have. Are we all right for another 10 minutes?
I can go. Listen, I love you dearly. So like, if you want to talk another 10 minutes, I'm more than happy to.
Okay, great. Well, we haven't really talked about MoonPay, so we should talk about MoonPay. As of recording this right now, it was a pretty big week, but I will say that I feel like every week is a big week for MoonPay. There's always some phenomenal large scale announcement, which just speaks to, this $300 billion valuation that MoonPay has right now.
3.4 billion.
I'm sorry, 3.1 billion, which speaks to this 3.1 billion valuation.
3.4 billion.
Oh my God.
This is why it's not live, right? This is why it's not live. The Series A valuation was 3.4 billion.
Okay.
That was back in 2021.
3.4 billion valuation. How old is the company?
The company is 6 years old.
Just announced this week, new HQ in New York City, covered by the New York Post. Big news, planting some roots down in New York. A lot happening at the business level, but also a lot of advocacy at the policy level. Talk to us about some highlights for MoonPay this last kind of 12 months.
Look, I would say this is a lot of credit goes to Ivan, our founder, for his vision forward. A lot of credit goes to Lindsay Haswell, our chief legal officer, who I would say is one of the finest chief legal officers I've ever worked with. And, she sits on BlackRock's crypto ETF board. And she's been incredible in terms of helping us mature the organization from a compliance perspective, an AML perspective, from a regulatory perspective. A lot of credit goes to the team. Okay. Like, it's been a long evolution, right? I've done this a few times before, right? With these turnarounds, launches, and saves. And MoonPay was by far the longest one. But like, when I step back today at this given moment, I look at this team, I think like, wow, we have an absolutely incredible team. The reason that I feel so confident about it is I see what we've built over the past 2 years, which was, a fully compliant, regulated sort of KYC layer to access the decentralized ecosystem, right? And against that backdrop, during that time, we've diversified our offerings, right? It used to be, fiat to crypto, just buy. Now it's buy and sell. And, it's historically been a very convenient transactional business, but we rolled out MoonPay balances, and MoonPay balances allows us to offset some of the fees to reduce costs so people can enter into the ecosystem and remove friction. We did that in Europe in November. We did it in the US, just about a month and a half ago, and we're going to continue to roll out incentives. A lot of what we've been doing over the past year and a half, 2 years is diversifying access to this ecosystem for people through, PayPal or Venmo, right? Venmo, which we have the exclusive partnership with to, onboard or offboard into the crypto ecosystem. But then also with partners like MasterCard, right? Where they continue to evolve their priceless initiatives into the blockchain. What I love about where the company is today is everyone just loves the ecosystem the way I love the ecosystem. Like, I wake up every day and I'm so excited by this, right? I hope it comes through in our conversation, right? Like, I just get so excited by like all the different touch points it has and where it's going. But I'm also excited because like right now it shifted so strongly in the direction of crypto, where I really just want people to realize like, no, don't get caught up in the news cycle. Focus on the fact that like the foundational elements for the maturation of this industry is here. And I think that there's going to be so much transformation that's going to take place that MoonPay is so ripe to capture. And so we've been very lucky. Now, you've known me for half a decade. Like, I'm really good in the Churchillian moments of when going through hell, keep going, right? Or difficulties mastered, or opportunities won, right? I'm endlessly fearful of really good moments like this, because my fear is that people get caught up by the hype and by the excitement, that they stop actually like really rolling up their sleeves and building. And so what makes me so thankful and grateful of the team at MoonPay today is we have so many people who like are just going nonstop building through this and ignoring the sort of hype or the extremism that's out there about the space, because they could see that we're building against a trend line that we believe is the future state of finance, not against a hype cycle that's driven by the media. And so like that to me is what has me so excited. 2 years ago, the company was not profitable. This past year it was profitable. We are more diversified than ever before. I think we have some of the strongest relationships we've ever had with our partners, because we're able to offer so much support. And what we've really focused on from a partnership perspective is not just being the payments provider, right? But essentially building a horizontal offering to our partners, very much in the mindset of what the Bloomberg terminal did, right? So when I was at Bloomberg, I used to ask Mike this question all the time. I'd say, are you worried about this? And he would say, no, because anyone could do one thing better than the terminal, but nobody could do 40,000 things better than the terminal. And that's what we've been building at MoonPay, which is anyone might be able to beat us on like one small area of price, but nobody could beat us on the marketing, the distribution, the promotions, the support that we could provide, and that's why we keep making acquisitions like Helio, which gives us the pay with crypto options. It's why we make the acquisitions like Iron, which gives us the stablecoin infrastructure and distribution. But that's what I'm excited about.
Are we close to crypto's 1,000 songs in your pocket moment?
I love that moment more than anything else. I think that we are very close. I think that we are very, very close. I think people are beginning to understand it when they start to see like how stable coins are providing money movement sort of frictions in like the most simplistic manners, right? Like a great example I give is I think it was like 5% of the GDP of Venezuela last year was remittances. I think it was $500 billion. The remittances get charged a fee of something there between 7 and 13% using a traditional bank or money, lender to move it, like a wiring house to move it. And like that's going to go to zero, right? And so like a lot of it's not going to be 1,000 songs in your pocket. A lot of it's going to be more like your high definition television, where like you just get a new technology and it just is better and it's a quicker experience. And I think that what people confuse with a lot of this is it's a lot of crypto is invisible, and a lot of people I think want it to be visible. And I think that's why I wrote that article. Nobody cares about how your toilet works, because nobody does care how their toilet works. They just want it to work. But if you go on Wikipedia, you get a 10,000 word article with 82 references.
I was in DC last week for the Time 100 talks, and there was obviously leaders from the CFTC and other regulators. And
I want to pause you for 1 second.
Yeah,
you're referencing Acting Chair Caroline Pham, who's there, and she is
amazing.
She is an absolutely brilliant thinker, a rational thinker, a fair thinker. Like a lot of people don't realize this, but she was at Citi for many years, working on the legal blockchain initiatives that they had in their evolution. She's done a remarkable job at the CFTC in her current capacity as acting chair and as a commissioner.
She was so impressive. I was so blown away.
I'm biased. I like her so much. Like I think Caroline is brilliant.
With the stablecoin legislation gaining momentum and kind of this bipartisan interest growing, are we finally at a turning point for US crypto regulation, and where to kind of, from your vantage point with MoonPay, what does like meaningful regulation actually look like?
Sure. So big difference between regulation and legislation, right? So legislation's more permanent, regulations more, what is the current administration or ruling party going to sort of enforce? I'm very hopeful, right? Like you have crypto legislation emerging, you have the stablecoin bill, but you also have the market structure bill, right? And like these are two really important initiatives. And like, I just love that we're beginning to see the country move in this direction, right? Like this is the greatest country on the planet. I want it to be successful. Like I want it to have infrastructure that, allows it to sort of continue to thrive for the next 100 years. I think this moves us in the right direction. From a legislative perspective, we saw for the first time ever, the first ever crypto law get signed into effect with the DeFi broker rule. And this is just an absolutely silly rule that, was put into place, from a politicized perspective before. And now all of a sudden, is legally sort of out of operations, if that makes sense. It's cleaned up. So yes, I'm very bullish.
Yeah, very bullish indeed. I know we've got to kind of wrap this up, but Keith, I was just curious, you've kind of had a front row seat to some of the biggest shifts in media and in money. And what is it that kind of gives you the most hope? What are you particularly bullish on? What do you think we'll look back in 10 years and maybe say, wow, I didn't see that coming?
Look, I'm now, I don't want to be a broken record, but I would say this is what I'm bullish about is like, we're undergoing one of the largest transformational moments in terms of how value is moving through the internet. And this transformational moment is happening as a technology is evolving and a generation is sort of evolving at the same time. So it's going to be super disruptive, far more disruptive than if just a technology emerged without a generational shift. But within the United States and even in Europe, right, you're seeing four clarities. You're seeing regulatory clarity, you're seeing legislative clarity, you're seeing banking clarity, and you're seeing accounting clarity. Normally, industries get one of those clarities and maybe half of those clarities. Very rarely do you get all four of those clarities at the exact same time. The fact that those four clarities are occurring at the exact same time is this sort of trend line moving towards value movement on the internet is unbelievably exciting. It is incredibly disruptive. I think that the one thing I would leave all of your viewers with and all of your friends with is this is, if you don't understand it, no worries, right? I built out with the team a resource called the MoonPay Minute, right? That if you Google MoonPay Minute, it takes complex crypto terms and explains it to you in 1 minute or less, right? And I did it because I don't want to push away people who don't understand or see this revolution or this evolution. I want to embrace them. I want to pull them in. I don't want this to be politicized. This is not politicized. This is a technology, right? And so what should be politicized is the regulations, which should be clear. They should be fair. They should not be favoring one person over another. And they should just allow the industry to then evolve from there. And so, like, how can you not be excited by this, right? Like, to me, there's no doubt in my mind that this is an inevitable, the same way that the digitization of everything was inevitable in my mind. And I'm not saying because one time I was right over here on something, I'm going to be right over here. It just looks like a natural extension that if it can be digitized, it will. And ultimately, if it's digitized, it ultimately can be tokenized. And so to your question, does it have to matter if it's tokenized or not? Doesn't, like, sometimes some of it's not going to matter, right? But ultimately, from all of that, discovery, there's going to be value that's going to be created. And I cannot wait to see what the second, third, fourth order effects of this are.
Well, our goal with this show isn't to hype, it's to humanize. We want to make sure that emerging tech feels less intimidating and more inevitable by bringing in the people that are shaping it. So Keith, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing not just your expertise, but your optimism. And thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you for everything, and thank you for always being a friend, Rachel. It's been a pleasure to know you over all these years, and so.
Thanks for tuning in to The Good News Is. If you're excited about what's next, make sure to follow the show and visit goodnewsstudio.io for more stories, guests, and ways to stay connected. Until next time, stay curious.